feeling that 2017 is going to be a little bit weird. And this is why I say this. The forces that want to undo our traditions, destroy our Christian observations, destroy our nation, they've just been showing their heads occasionally, a pop-off here, a tweet there, and so forth. But with the devastating defeat of Hillary Clinton and the so-called global elite, oh, now, those on the left particularly, oh, they're agitated. They don't feel like they weren't very subtle before, but now they're going all the way over the line into the realm of outrageous. Like the homosexual man holding a child while he berates Ivanka Trump on a commercial flight, while his homosexual partner tweets that the harassment is going to take place. So this fool gets thrown off the flight, and he gets another one. But that's just the beginning. It is emblematic of how pathetic the left is, number one, and it's also an indicator of how pathetic they're going to be in the new year. So get ready for it, because it's not going to get better. Now, this is what they will try to do. They'll try to simply wear us down. You know that old thing about eat that nasty pile over there because 10 billion flies can't be wrong? Well, that's precisely that's the doctrine they're going to attempt to employ. They'll get everybody who's got a squawk, a squeak, a curse word, a name, an insult, to somehow get a little visibility so that it will appear that the overwhelming majority of Americans just don't approve of this administration or the direction that our new president wants to take the country. So, New Year's Day is over a week away. But I want to declare 2017 as the year of intolerance. I personally believe that we have tolerated about all we can afford to. You have people coming over the border, this character of a president, who in my opinion should be hanged on the White House lawn for what he's done to this country, if for no other reason than for the deaths he has allowed to happen via the murderous conduct of the illegal immigrants he allowed to pour into the country. That alone should warrant the death penalty. Yeah, I said before, earlier in the week, I looked up the legal definition of treason. No, nothing that he's done really fits that definition. However, traitor does. He is a traitor to this country, in my opinion. That's my story, and I'm sticking with it. Now, in the meantime, even planet Earth is getting agitated. Maybe we're causing it. 6.5 earthquake rattling northern Australia. Snow falling in the Sahara for the first time in 37 years. Just stuff like that. And a Santa face spotted in a cloud over England. That's kind of that's a little upbeat. But it's stuff like this. The Washington Post, owned by Mr. Amazon, Bezos, according to hangthebankers.com, oh, I'm sure this is fake news, right? Washington Post owner receives $600 million contract from CIA. Snopes. Snopes.com. People have been kind of turning a jaundiced eye toward Snopes for years. But according to fellowshipoftheminds.com, backed up by investigative journalist and former U.S. Navy officer and NSA employee Wayne Madsen, the so-called fact-check website Snopes, which Facebook is using to combat so-called fake news, is a CIA operation. Now, thanks to a report by the UK's Daily Mail, we know Snopes not only peddles CIA propaganda, it is a sleazy outfit run by, according to the article, an embezzler, a former hooker and porn star, and a dominatrix. Reporting for Daily Mail, December 21 of this year, Alana Goodman points out that Snopes.com will benefit from Facebook using the site as an arbiter of truth by determining what's fake news. Now, this DailyMail.com investigation has exposed Snopes.com's sleazy underbelly. Well, would we expect anything more? Now, from thesun.co.uk, the UK is on terror alert. London to be protected from terror attack by a new £5 million, that's money, ring of steel built around the city. Counter-terror specialists have put together plans for a secure cordon which would seal off key routes. Okay? Now, going to Germany and WND.com, more than a third of Germans sometimes feel like strangers in their own country due to the massive influx of Muslim migrants over the past couple of years, according to a study made public last month. Likewise, a third of Germans told researchers there are too many foreigners in Germany. A study was conducted by the Frederick Ebert Foundation, also found a 53% majority of Germans want a limit on refugees coming into the country. And yet, the Mexican government is saying, apply for citizenship right away. And the surge over the border is at all-time highs. The funny thing is, it's not just Mexicans at all. No, it's Asians and it's sub-Saharan Africans, all streaming in. They've given up on Europe. They're thinking that's maybe a little too dangerous. Their chance might be better if they came to the U.S. The conversation we had yesterday with Dr. Pry, I think, should be taken very seriously. The year of 2017, I would like to be a year of rediscovering who we really are now. And remembering who we were. Who are we today? Who are we really? As opposed to what we were. So the focus is going to be on self-reliance, preparedness, defense of self and family, intolerance of anti-American agendas, intolerance of the press when they try to psychologically rearrange our thinking. A little redundancy there, but I think you know what I mean. Using various psyops and psychological techniques to change our thinking. We can't allow this. We have to decide what we're going to accept and what we are not going to accept. It's more than just the next paycheck, the next buzz, the next date. The party's over. I've been saying this for a long time. The party's over. And now the house lights come up and it's time to clean up. Nearly 3,000 communities in the U.S. have lead levels higher than Flint. Do we think that because, 3,000 U.S. communities. If you go to zerohedge.com and just type in 3,000 U.S. communities have lead into the search bar, just put in those words, zerohedge.com, U.S. communities have lead levels higher than Flint. Article come right up. All the communities Reuters investigated had lead levels at least 2 times higher than Flint's. More than 1,000 were 4 times higher. In most cases, the local data covered a 5 to 10 year period through 2015, according to an analysis. Well, if you consume lead, it makes you stupid. It really does. You can have it in your food. You can have it in your water. But when it gets into your body, that heavy metal, your brain starts deteriorating and your thinking functions deteriorate along with the actual organic deterioration. So remember it. Don't tolerate it. Go around it. You don't have to get one from us, but get one. I recommend a Berkey water filter. It takes out heavy metals. It takes radiologicals out. It takes chromium-6 out, down to survivable levels, if not eliminating them completely, those elements. We're going to have to get Boy Scout and Girl Scout on this. We're going to have to be prepared. The left is so absolutely livid. They're not angry. They're not upset. They're livid. And everything you can imagine is going to be ramped up that they think would serve them in overthrowing traditional America. I look around and I see so few Christmas trees. I see so few Christmas lights. Christianity going underground in this country. Terror attacks threatened over Christmas holidays. Well, could I just say a jolly to hell with those people who would visit violence upon us? And to hell with the left-wing progressives. They are the enemies of the state. To hell with this invasion of people we didn't invite in and who will not serve this country in any way, shape, or form. We don't need that much labor. And the last time I checked, we don't have a bunch of Einstein-level brainiacs coming across the border at all. These are people coming across the border with need. What do they need? What you have. We have to get our own oxygen mask on and then assist other people as we can. But if we don't get our own survival gear on first, then we're lost along with these people that we're supposed to show generous to and extend all this charity to. Enough is enough. Germany is about to be destroyed. Italy is about to be destroyed. France is about to be destroyed. England is about to be destroyed. The United States is about to be destroyed, all under the guidance of the United Nations, which is, in my opinion, a criminal organization. And they're nothing but puppets of the so-called global elites who are largely invisible. And so, rather than talk about a bunch of this stuff, we're going to talk to a man who is actually located in Egypt, Yousef. And I'll tell you all about him, and, well, not all about him, but enough. He has a very, very thick Egyptian accent, but his English is very good. It's a lot better than my Egyptian, I'll tell you that. And I think you're going to enjoy hearing what he has discovered. His father devoted his life to the story of the pyramids over there and trying to find out who put them there, how were they built, what do they mean, what do they do. And I think I'd kind of rather go with that today rather than any more political discussions for this year. The overwhelming response to Donald Trump's initiative and what he wants to do for the country, he's made it clear he needs our help. I think we should give it to him. I think we should forget about Hollywood and forget about the musicians that were just, so convinced that Donald Trump was just poison for the country. Oh, Hillary Clinton's good for the country. Donald Trump's poison. And now people are saying, it's a betrayal of the Americans' trust in Donald Trump. What if something happens with the Fed, or what happens to the debt if all of a sudden what he says will happen with improved economic conditions here, more jobs and more money for people to spend for themselves and to improve and enrich their families. Enrich doesn't mean make rich. It just means make less poor. What do we do about what happens? You're going to have to wait and see. Because we know very well what would have happened under a Hillary Clinton administration. Higher taxes, more gun control, more control. Well, Mr. Trump wants less control, and that's what I want too. So we're going to talk about pyramids today. But that's my Christmas message. I think it can be viewed as a hopeful and happy message. Take back your individuality. Like Dr. Pry said yesterday, your rugged individualism, your ability to not only give a punch, but to take one and to overcome. Okay? Now, here's the other part. We're going dark next week because guests that we want to speak with are spending time with their family and friends. They're not available. And frankly, we're tired. We're going to take a few days off. That said, we'll do a Christmas Eve show tomorrow night on KLIF, AM 570. You can pick it up on KLIF.com, Red Nation Rising, TalkStream Live, iHeartRadio. So tune in. It'll be a good show. And then we're going to do another one on New Year's Eve. So we're not slacking. We're just getting a little bit of rest. We need it because 2017 is going to be an unbelievable year. But we're going to have to believe it because the stuff that's coming is, well, it's going to come and it's going to happen. So, rather than worry, why don't we get excited about it? Why don't we just get ready to get it on? And wasn't it the Pope and the Queen of England who said, enjoy this last Christmas? Well, do. Celebrate your Christianity. We don't know when Jesus was born. Some people say it was October. Monty Mills says it was April 1st. We observe it on December 25. Well, you're excluding people. Well, if you're not Christian, you don't believe in Jesus, then yeah, you're excluded. Sorry. You want a balloon or what? Will that make you feel better? We observe the birth of our Lord, Savior, the Christ, Jesus, on December 25th. I don't care if it turns out to be May 1st or maybe Cinco de Mayo. I don't care. We're going to observe it on December 25th. So bind yourself closely to your friends and your family. If you have issues with family members, heal them. Because at the end of the line, the only thing that matters are the people in your life that you love or loved, and that love was lost. Regain, recapture that love. Bask in it. Savor it. Because it's going to be a tough year in 2017. What data do you have to support this? Intuition. It's kept me alive this long. I have no reason to think it will not keep me alive in the future. Or you either, for that matter. If you feel it in your gut, go with it. Okay? And we'll get through this. It may not be very easy. We do not know what threats we will face. We will deal with them. And we'll help each other along the way. But to those who oppose us, to those who are enemies of Christ and enemies of those who believe in Christ, well, I think those are the words. They are our enemies. We will deal with them humanely, if possible, than any of us. He is Yousef Awyan. And from where he is right now in Egypt, the pyramids are, so to speak, right over there. It's the town where he was born and grew up there. He is co-director of the Kemet School of Ancient Mysticism. Kemetologist, speaker, explorer, stonemason, artist, and musician. He was born and raised at his family's home in Nazlet el Saman, which lies just a few meters from the Sphinx Entrance to the Giza Plateau. Yousef grew up listening avidly to his father, world-renowned chematologist Abdel Hakim Awyan, talk about the secrets and mysteries of ancient Kemet, Egypt. Sharing his passion, he honors his father's memory by carrying on the tradition of sharing the secrets of this very sacred indigenous wisdom. He is devoted to revealing, researching, and teaching the amazing truths of Egypt's and our collective heritage. He met and married his wife, Patricia, in 2008. Together they created the Kemet School of Ancient Mysticism as an open forum to share the teachings of Hakim and to continue on with the exploration and research of the ancient mysteries, both on and off the sites. He divides his time between carving sculptures, creating and playing music, and interacting with visitors from all over the world. Yousef and Patricia host several tours each year as a venue to share this knowledge, assisting people to broaden their vision of the history of Egypt, and citing the evidence of the superior intelligence, spirituality, and technologies of the people who once inhabited ancient Kemet. News of their activities can be found on their websites, www.kemetology, KHEMITOLOGY.com, Kemetology. Yousef has been studying ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs, or the Suf language, as Hakim called it, for most of his life. He reads and interprets the glyphs, symbols, and images found in Egypt from the indigenous understanding, as well as from what he's learned through his study of hieroglyphics texts. He's a gifted artist, sculptor, and musician, and he's with us now, coming to us from Egypt. This is quite exotic and quite wonderful. Welcome, Yousef. Good to have you with us.
Thank you, John. It's happy to be here with you.
You know, it's so tempting to just say, okay, let's start off with this. Who built the pyramids? But maybe we could just work into that later, you know? But of course, that's what everybody wants to know, all the amazing geometry, and people have said that, in fact, Dr. Sam Osmanagic, the discoverer of the Bosnian pyramid, said that it's his opinion that the pyramids even make their own oxygen. Now, I don't know, I wasn't there, but some of the research that's been revealed to us, or the results of the research, are just extraordinary. But since you are right there by it, and you have been involved your whole life in studying it and following in your father's footsteps, you know, I'm inclined to think that if anybody's close to the reality of what the pyramids mean and who put them there and why they were put there, that would probably be you. So, why don't we... there's no point in asking you what got you into this work. It's pretty obvious. You're right there by them, so why not? And your father was doing it, so... So, what do we know that, you know, I have an old book, Inside the Great Pyramid, published just shortly after the turn of the 1900s.
Yeah.
And this man had gone in with his, actually he didn't survive the trip, his brother finished the book. But he was convinced that the pyramids were of divine origin. And then later on, you know, you have the king's chamber, which is in the middle, the queen's chamber at the top, and then the pit at the bottom. And in all these drawings, there were these windows, if you will, that were described as vents. But then on the History Channel some years ago, they took a look out of these so-called vents and observed the constellations and the various star clusters, and then using a computer, rolled time back until I guess they were satisfied that they were close to the origin of the pyramid, and what was revealed there was the constellation of Osiris. And that's pretty much all I know about this. So I'm counting on you to make us smart and blow away some of the myths and the rumors and bring as much factual evidence as you can to us.
Yeah, well, you brought many subjects. Let's not talk about the Bosnian pyramid. Let's talk about the Egyptian pyramid. This is first of all, because I heard about the Bosnian pyramid, but I didn't have the opportunity to study it or to even see enough photos or documentaries about it to make up my mind about it.
Oh, I got you. I only mentioned it because that doctor had also spent a good bit of time in Egypt trying to understand the meaning of those pyramids. So yeah, I agree with you. You're in Egypt. Let's talk about the Egyptian ones.
Exactly. But you mentioned also something very nice, which is that alignment with the stars. And of course, it's been studied for years. And other things like that, such as the alignment with the cardinal directions and the power of the design, all these things which made us aware of what we know today as the pyramid power, and the experiments that was done to understand more about the activation of that of the shape and the alignment, which is some people maybe heard about this a lot before, how the shape can absorb the cosmic energy, and all the tests that was done inside the models of pyramids aligned with the cardinal directions to preserve food or purify polluted water and the razor blade that gets sharper, and this kind of tests. This leads directly to the labels we have around the pyramid as a tomb, and why would anything like this serve in the idea of a tomb, and especially the alignment with the stars and the activations of the pyramid that we still aware of, even that the structure is not fully preserved. Let's say it this way. So yeah, this itself in itself forms a big question mark. Like it cannot be a coincidence. Those who built the pyramid, they know exactly what they are designing, and anybody who once claimed that the bent pyramid in the shore is a mistake. So every day's facts now, every research that is going around this pyramid, the bent pyramid in the shore, is proving that it was meant to be in that design. It's another design for another purpose or for another use. Not the idea that Senefru was the king of supposedly the father of Cheops, was like at his era they were still not done with the final design of a pyramid, so they made a mistake, and then he had to build himself another pyramid, which is the Red Pyramid. Like one story like that, even mainstream officials don't accept it anymore. But it leaves us with a big question mark if this pyramid was not a mistake. So it's not for Senefru, because Senefru had his Red Pyramid. So who built it? And it leaves more questions than answers. And this is the case in most researches. Every time we research something like the lost technology or something like that, leads to more questions. So it's definitely, there's still more mystery and mysteries also than what's solved. So it's still a mystery, and that's what we need to know here as a beginning for sure. Nobody knows or have conclusive evidence about how the pyramids were built. And as a mystery, we would wonder, did the pyramid require sophisticated technology, or could it be built with primitive tools and technology? So that's still a question, because the official books is all talking about theories, how this was done with primitive tools. And like one of the cases that I disagree with the studies about the Old Kingdom and their capability. When we are talking about granite stone, especially granite stone is a plutonic stone, and it's around 7 on the Mohs scale of solidness. And in the official books, they mention that no granite stone was quarried out of the bedrock in the Old Kingdom, because they didn't have the capability. And they evolved in the Middle Kingdom, and they were able in the Middle Kingdom to quarry out of the bedrock itself, to hack and quarry the granite stone out of the bedrock or out of the granite stone quarry. And then everything that is made out of granite, like especially the huge blocks we see in the King's Chamber and in the Valley temples and in the pyramid structure in general, everything in it is not hacked out of the bedrock, because they believe that the Old Kingdom had limits with their tools. They couldn't quarry out of the bedrock itself. So where did they get the granite? As they explain in the official story, that it was brought from falling pieces aside of the granite mountain, or from loose pieces in the mountain. And of course, this makes no sense. And as a stone carver, of course, I look at it. When we look at not the whole pyramid, but just, for example, at what's known as the open court in the so-called temple, in the per netter height, or the height netter.
Yes.
Which is the structure usually located in the east of the pyramid structure, of the pyramid. Because maybe I should say this first. The pyramid complex is not just a pyramid. The pyramid complex is the pyramid with a wall that surrounds it and a structure to the eastern side and what's known as the causeway, and then the valley temple, it's another structure. All this together forms a pyramid complex. And more than that, in some cases like the middle pyramid, we have the Osirian shaft, which is part of the underground structure with chambers and boxes, and it is part of the pyramid complex as well. Anyway, the perimeter that is located to the eastern side has what's known as the open court, and it usually contains 16 pillars from granite stone. 16 pillars, in most cases, they are around 5.5 meters, give or take, between 5 and 6 meters. And that's huge.
And heavy.
Yeah, 16 pillars from granite stone carved in different shapes, cubic, or the palm shape, or the lotus shape, or the papyrus shape. These very challenging, even for us today, to manufacture just one pillar. So imagine 16 from the same stone, no extension, all from single solid pieces, all carved exactly the same. This is reflecting somebody who is not primitive to work with granite stone. Like, this is not limited. So why do you think that they didn't have the capability? Where do you find 16 falling pieces that they are all the same size, and then you can shape them to make them all perfect size? It's very hard, of course. If you also study a little bit geology, then you can, or even if you went to Aswan, where the granite stone came from, and you look at the mountains, it's impossible to find 16 of these. In the best case, you'll find one piece, not 16.
And is all granite basically the same, or are there different kinds of granite?
There are different kinds of granite, of course. And most of us believe that the granite came from Aswan, but there are other possibilities, especially now when we study more geology. We can have other types. It's called also cyanite, which is, granite, as our teacher, Susan Moore, she's a geologist with us in the Quebec school. She taught us there are over 700 names for granite stone. So what we only just know it by rose granite or black granite, but we have actually in the structures, we have the rose granite, and we have cyanite, which is a type of black granite, and we have granodiorite, and we have diorite, and we have also cyanite with porphyritic diorite, and many big combinations. This is just in granite. So this did not go to a lab to be found out. It's just by the look at what we studied from seeing the different stones in the collection in the Geology Museum in Cairo. And lots of the black granite looks like it is the one coming from the Eastern Desert, not all coming from Aswan. So there was quarries, of course, in the Eastern Desert. They developed many different types of stones and copper and many other things from the Eastern Desert, the ancient Egyptians. We even had a geology maps, and we have quarries. We have evidence for all this. But we're still talking about the rose granite and the pillars in the open court. They reflect really somebody who is capable of shaping 16 pillars on that palm shape. The palm shape is very challenging for that. It starts, the base is wide, and then it ascends up and gets narrower. And then the crown of it, which is the palm shape, that gets also wider again. is from the same block of stone. It's not a separate. The crown of the pillar is not made out of a separate piece, which is something you never see in the Roman structures or any other structure. They usually make the crown from a different or a separate piece of stone. Why am I mentioning this? Because now you have to see that not just the shape, it's how much granite stone was carved for that shape to come out, which shows that they had the tools and the capability. They didn't just make a pillar, they make 16 pieces of art, and they are all matching each other. And anybody who is looking, who doesn't have the capability to work with this kind of stone is going to dismiss it. And they were just going to be satisfied with softer types of stones, similar to the New Kingdom time when that poor type of sandstone from another location called the Silsila was much more popular than the older structures that were, most of it was made from granite and the quartzite and the calcite and basalt stone. Not just that, but this is like some of the hard stones that's in the ancient megalithic structures. So, so I believe that they thought they didn't, because when they studied, and this is a very important point, because most of officials, they study, or most of the official books, when they say like we study something, they don't study it as the manufacturing, because of course you must be an engineer or even a stone carver to study that, but they study it based on the scenes on the walls and based on the tools, of course, that was found in the Old Kingdom tools. So, and they say this because they know the capability of copper chisels is not going to be able to do that. Even some of them believe that copper chisels can. I'm sure they believe that because they never tried themselves to carve a granite with copper chisels. And that's also another big subject about the copper chisels. The stone chisels will be more functioning, more reliable in carving other stones than copper or even iron. All the iron is not strong enough. Only now, very fine types of stainless steel and carbon tips and stuff like that we use, or diamonds, or gems like emerald, things like that. This can be used to carve hard stones because we have conclusive evidence that artifacts were carved from granite stone with manual tools. We are not denying this at all. But on the other hand, we have other things, especially in the pyramid structure, reflecting what's known as the lost technology. And of course, the research was done by and documented professionally in the lost technologies in ancient Egypt by the professor and the engineer Christopher Dunn. So the marking of the power of these power tools and of this lost technology that was never seen on the walls before or found as tools is a mystery. That's a big mystery because when we study what's on the walls, for example, the idea of the Ram Road and all these things are mentioned in, for example, the tomb of Rahmi Ra in the West Bank. He was one of the priests. And at some of the scenes on the walls, they are showing how there was a process of making mud brick so they can make the rams, and then they take there was no scaffolds. This is the kind of scaffolds they use. They will fill the whole structure from inside with the mud bricks, and then they can drag the stones on them and then build it and then remove the mud brick level by level, and then they can finish while they are going down step by step. So that's how everything is being explained based on scenes like that one. And how did they move the stuff, the slides and the dragging with the ropes and the a liquid. This is all based on studying um, the scenes on the walls, but not the artifacts themselves. How did the carving happen? How did the polishing happen? All this is based on understanding that was found on scenes on the walls of the tombs of the Old Kingdom or even in the New Kingdom. But it's not enough to understand everything because we have the artifacts. The scenes in the Old Kingdom, for example, that showed the process of manufacturing vessels and basins and things like that, showed the tools and the different stages from cutting to emptying the inside of it to polishing and everything, and it looks functional. They have a drill in this scene from a branch, and then there's like a hook in the base of it above a piece of flint. Some people say copper and some people say flint, but I prefer flint because flint is around 8 on the Mohs scale, and it can be used as a good tool to carve softer stones like calcite. And 2 weights on the sides of that branch, and then it's made to spin, so it's manual and it's a drill and looking functional. But when you look at unfinished pieces, like the pieces, for example, in the Flinders Petrie Museum in England, you will find that Flinders Petrie documented that lost technology based on artifacts he found, not based on a scene on the wall, which is the tubular drill that was used in these vessels to cut the core out of the vessel. And because some of them are unfinished, so the core of the tubular drill is still attached with the piece of stone. So there is no doubt that that's how it was done. Yet we don't have this in the scenes. Was it a secret knowledge that nobody was supposed to know? Where are the tools? The tools are not found. Or that era didn't use these tools. And these tools were used in an older era because the vessels is good vessels. And it's a big subject about the vessels, by the way, because these vessels are found in burials in sites that is dated or related to the pre-dynastic time. Not just the archaic age of the first and second dynasty, no, to the pre-dynastic time, like the Neolithic age era, and the famous ones of the Badari and the Badari civilization and the Nakkada civilization and the Jersey civilization and the Marmada civilization. These are all names of civilizations that lived in the pre-dynastic Egypt. And by the way, they get the names from the locations where they found the evidence about these civilizations that lived in the Neolithic era and around 1,500 years older than the dynastic civilization, if we follow the timelines that we see in the official books. So the pre-dynastic civilizations, in their burials, they found some of these vessels made from very, very strong types of stones, rock crystal, quartz, milky quartz, bercia, porphyry, and granite stone. So these kind of stones also are not located in one place. So for some people, it's supposed to be very primitive, that they didn't figure out the pottery wheel yet. Some of these vessels were found side by side with other vessels made from pottery, and the vessels that's made from pottery is made by the hand style, not by the wheel, not on the wheel, just by doing it with the hand, shaping it, so it's not fully circular like the ones made on the pottery wheel. So imagine artifact that is made by hand because there was no pottery wheel side by side with another one that is made by tubular drill that we hardly started to understand not long time ago. So that also forms a mystery. So where did the pre-dynastic civilization got these vessels from? Some of these vessels were found, big treasure was found underneath the step pyramid of Saqqara or Netrighet, also of course famous as Jisr or Zosa. And it was stashed in underground tunnel, more than 40,000 of them, from all these different types of stones, including calcite and amethyst and red jasper. And so you cannot find these stones in one place. That forms a challenge for some people who's just evolved from hunt and gather to establish a quarry and then do this fine machine. And there is another thing. The writings that was added by the archaic age dynasties, which is like Hatshepsut or Per Epsin or these names on these vessels, they look like hardly scratches on the surface. Even they have lots of beautiful artifacts carved from soft stones like limestone. But when they came to the challenge of carving over a hard stone like porphyry, they gave the very crude result for the writing, which shows that they didn't have the tools. So if they don't have the tools, how can they do it? This is still also answered. In my opinion, it would be inherited from an older, of course. So who are the olders? How come they are not written in the history books? Was there a golden era for that? Was there an ancient advanced civilization? This is also the question. So this question is not, of course, bothering me alone. It's also many other people around the world, like Dr. Robert Chuck and Brian Forster and Stephen Miller and Susan Moore and myself and Patricia and many, many other people. Of course, many people are looking for the UFO, and I don't believe in the UFO that they taught us what we know. I believe that we can know ourselves, how to find our technology and knowledge based on many things, of course. But, for example, a man like Edward Ledskalnin, who made the Coral Castle in Florida, he was a good proof of taking the challenge of building something megalithic all by himself with not so sophisticated tools, but he knew other secrets, of course, and unfortunately he didn't share it with the world. So back to the subject of the officials and the Old Kingdom again. So they didn't agree that the Old Kingdom civilization could quarry out of the bedrock. Even when you look at the back side of the stones, granite stone, at the structures like Abu Sir or like the Giza Plateau or these places, you find the same style of the rough carving that you see around the unfinished obelisk in the quarry in Aswan, which is coming out of the bedrock, which is what's famous for us as the scoop markings, what we call the scooping marking. And that's definitely you can realize in the third pyramid structure, the blocks, and also, as I said, in the Great Pyramid and in Abu Sir. So then they said that the Middle Kingdom was the one that evolved to be able to quarry out of the bedrock. Well, I'm sure also they have their reasons to do that, but I will only also return to the official books to talk about that subject. We have in the official books um, two pyramids, an area called Elish, that's the location, and in the ancient Egyptian time, the location was called Ethit Tawi, means the one that captures both lands. And it's famous to be the capital of ancient Egypt during the Middle Kingdom time. And there are two pyramids there for Amenemhat and Senusert from the Middle Kingdom. It's in the official books that they found that the pyramids were built from stones that was recycled from all the kingdom structures. You follow that? So the two pyramids, if they were built or renovated, they showed that the stone was recycled. Whatever they used to build it or renovate it, it was reused from all the kingdom structure. And how they would know that? Of course, sometimes in the back of the slabs that they used, the other face of it, some pieces fell down and they revealed themselves that they once had text from older era. That's how we recognize that it was reused from an older era. In most cases, it's like that. So here is a solid, conclusive evidence that in the Middle Kingdom, it was popular to recycle stone from older structure, to reuse it. The reuse of material, it's a very long story here in Egypt. Recycling and inheriting, and also, the succession of ages and the transformation of the shape of the site throughout the ages based on the inheritors and what they did to the site. So now we have two things. We have the official story in a hand that says that the Middle Kingdom started to hack out of the granite stone from the bedrock itself, which means that they evolved. And we have the fact that we saw Middle Kingdom structures and they reused stones that had writings from the Old Kingdom structures. I hope I'm not confusing everybody by that. But it is confusing. But which one are we going to believe? That they evolved or the other way around? Well, definitely the solid evidence is the one we have in the real life, not the theory, which is that we have structures that they are telling us that the stone in it was reused from an older structure. And we are talking about the Middle Kingdom. If we follow the official books again, it will be around 2100 BC. There is solid evidence to the officials. This is mainstream Egyptology here, not chematology. And it says that the Middle Kingdom reused stones from the Old Kingdom. So clearly they didn't evolve, but they used more stones from older structures. So are there cases like this in the Old Kingdom itself? Is there evidence of recycled stones? If you look about the story of recycled stones, you can find it throughout the ages. Few days ago, they found somebody using an ancient stone from a temple which was made as a millstone. He was using it to chop meat on it or stuff somewhere in the countryside. So it's actually still happening until today. But if we want to go through the eras from the modern time to the ancient time, we have a documented one and it's still there, the sugar factory. And that sugar factory, they used some of stones from ancient temple to build it. And you can still see the glyphs on the stone. If you go further than that, many different structures from the Islamic era. And you can see that they reused stones, like many cases in old Cairo, the Islamic Cairo. And in the same case in Coptic Cairo, they also reuse stones in, and the structures, not just the stones. You can find, for example, part of the structure of Isis temple was converted to serve as a church, and they even carved on the altars of granite the Coptic cross. So we cannot date and relate this to the Christians because it has the Coptic cross on it. But it was definitely once used as a church. And then if you go also further to the Greco-Roman era, you can find hundreds and hundreds of that style of reusing older structures, especially like one of the most famous cases, Dandara Temple in the south, the Temple of Hathor. Yeah, it's officially also known that this site was much, much, much older, and it was transformed throughout the ages from the Old Kingdom time until the Coptic era, and of course the Greco-Roman time.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, of course, the late period, 26th dynasty, and in the New Kingdom, you get Besusans. These are the names of the most famous artifacts, usurpers. They usurp statues by erasing the older names and adding their names on top of it to claim it. And this is, of course, the work of the priest, not the kings themselves yet. So this happened in Tanis, which is one of the sites that not much people go to, and we're going to be going, inshallah, in 2013. What's known as Per Ramses seems to be much older than Ramses, because Ramses is also one of the best ones who claimed structures and statues for himself, and it was not his. Yet most of the people say he's called Ramses the Great. And his son Merim Petah was also the same case. He erased his names and put his name. And they have a very famous formula called Samawi Irminu, means I renovated the site. And in some cases, like Merim Petah's case in one of the obelisks, leftover on one of the obelisks in Karnak, that says Irminu, means I made the structure, even that you can see older writings on that obelisk. So this is a very common thing to be happening, and it's a formula that used to be added to the site. Sometimes they say I renovated, and this is the meaning of the word Samawi. And sometimes they say Irim Minu, means I made the monument, like Merim Petah said. And the others. So we have also, this is documented officially in the New Kingdom. And in the Middle Kingdom, as I told you, that the case of the pyramids of El-Lisht or Ith-Tawi. And then nobody talks about recycling stones in the Old Kingdom, because this is supposed to be the original builder's timeline. But if we saw that there is much more to the ancient Egyptian civilization, this is another subject also we're going to talk about, that the timeline of dynastic Egyptian is much older than we think. And I'm not talking still about a pre-cataclysm civilization or era. I'm talking still about dynastic Egyptian itself. Anyway, I like to explore a lot in the Giza Plateau all my life. So one day I was wandering around the area between the Sphinx and the causeway and the middle pyramid to the southern side of that. There is lots of the old kingdom tombs. And there is one of the tombs called the tomb of the priest Ra-Wer. That's the name of the priest. Ra-Wer. Ra-Wer was a priest of the king during the fourth dynasty, بتاع شبسس. Ships's cap, sorry. And this is the end of the fourth dynasty. Anyway, the tomb itself was discovered by the Professor Salim Hassan in the 30s, and a part of it that is called the offering court has altars from white calcite crystal, offering altars. That's what the hall is called, the offering hall, and the altars are labeled as offering altars. And one thing Professor Salim Hassan mentioned, he said that these offering altars, they have an odd shape. This is not the shape of the offering altars that we are used to see. That's all what he mentioned about it. Anyway, when it was me and my friend and brother Stephen Miller on that day on the Giza Plateau, and we saw the altar was covered again with sand a little, but when I saw it, I didn't see an altar. I saw something that I see many times. It's a base of a pillar, and that's what I said to Stephen. This looks like a base of a pillar, but it's not in a location where a pillar can be put on it. It's inside a hole. So another time I went, and the Ministry of Antiquities did some cleaning to the place, so we saw the lower level of these altars, and they have carvings from the Old Kingdom also for the priest Ra'wir, and you can realize that they were once bases of pillars and then reused in the fourth dynasty as offering altars. And this is not the only case, but this is one of the good examples that showed us that also in the Old Kingdom it was going the recycling of stones and reusing it for different purposes. So the fourth dynasty, of course, we all know it's supposed to be the era of the pyramid builders. But if this was happening already in the fourth dynasty, and the other things like written in hieroglyphics, when somebody writes like I made that tomb for myself, and I didn't rob somebody else's tomb, and I paid the workers all their good deeds for making this tomb for me, and things like that. In my opinion, usually when these things are written like that, it's made by the priest because they actually took somebody else's tomb. This is the game. Why would they have to say that I didn't rob somebody else's tomb or I didn't take somebody else's belongings for me? If this was not a common thing, they would only say that if it was a common thing for somebody to take somebody else's artifact from his tomb to use it for his own resurrection in the afterlife. And this is all, again, the manipulation of the priesthoods. Some of the priesthoods, not all of them. So this part about the capability of the Old Kingdom themselves and of the pyramid builders. The pyramid builders were able to shape and cut and manufacture the most hard and solid types of stones, red jasper, and milky quartz, and rock crystal quartz, and the granitar porphyry, and like in a very high definition of everything, the details, the polish, and also in statues, like the statues of Khafra are reflecting the power tool marks, the tubular drill, and the saw. These are the lost technologies. So if you find a figure of an ancient Egyptian, like the statue of Khafra, and this statue is reflecting the same technology of the pyramid builders, then you cannot separate the pyramid builders from the ancient Egyptian civilization. And this is clear for those who want to see truth. But if some people want to believe that we are not capable of doing this, or we will never be capable of doing this, I think they need to reconsider lots of things. And beside the mystery of building the pyramid, when we talk about building temples, the temples in the south are dynastic temples. There is no doubt about that. There is conclusive evidence as well. These dynastic temples, like the pylons and the megalithic statues, also from hard stones, but they are not reflecting the power tools and the machine. These were done by cooperative work, teamwork. The priesthood had schools of teaching, carving, constructing, and of course medicine and astronomy and other things, but we are focusing on the subject of the structures, building. So when you see, for example, the pillars are built from sections, half circle with another half, and then two other half circles, each one is crossing the other one in a different alignment, in the opposite alignment. So they can interlock like some kind. And then they build it like if they are building a tower, and then they carve it. And again, they go up and down with it, with the mud brick rams that they did it with. And we are talking limestone and sandstone, not granite. So those are the ones who evolved in the New Kingdom were doing that. And this makes sense, because to make a whole pylon from this, with this style, in my opinion, is not as challenging as making one pillar from a single solid piece of rose granite. You know, the funny thing, until today, when you go to the workshops here and the factories that works with marble and granite and this for the kitchen counters or the tiles or things like that, they usually avoid the Aswanian granite because they say it destroys the diamond tip circular saw. So imagine today with our power tools, we avoid that kind of granite. And the ancient Egyptians were looking for the hardest and the finest type of it, so they can create their tools and the devices, shrines and basins. That shrine and that left the remaining part of the structure on Elephantine Island. With my own eye, I don't have to even look for anything. That is looking like a pyramid structure. But because, so I would relate it to the pyramid builders. I've seen very similar things between what's falling from that structure and the very temple in the Giza Plateau. Almost like a copy from it, and a ceiling from granite. Anyway, the outside part, which we can see that the foundation of it has like pillars from the New Kingdom time, and the gate has writings for Alexander. So they dated and they related that location to the Greco-Roman era, or Ptolemaic era, because of the name of Alexander. And it looks much, much more ancient. Also, the Osirian in Abydos, that megalithic structure that is located in a lower level than Seti-First's temple from the New Kingdom time. It has writings that was added, I believe, by Merim Petah also. And some, not all, but some officials by mistake, dated to um, the New Kingdom. But others, officials as well, they dated to the Old Kingdom because they see clearly the similarity between the pyramid structures and that temple. So that's how they did it to the Old Kingdom, based on comparing it with the pyramids that officially is dated to the Old Kingdom. So also in the case of statues, we have the method of style of art, the iconography, what's known as iconography. Sometimes we have statues with names like Ramses II or Miriam Pitah or Besusans or Hurem Heb or others, many usurpers in that era. But the professional archaeologists, they know how to date it or how to relate it by the method of carving or by the what's known as iconography. It's the style of art of that era. So in one of the cases, in many cases, the usurper didn't bother to erase the old name. So you can find more than one name in one statue, such as some of the sphinxes from black granite that was found in Tanis, again. This is in a city called Sharqiya in the Delta in Egypt. And Tanis, and that area is also not taking the right amount of archaeology and studies from the whole world, actually, because this area is as rich as Luxor. So it should have a lot more to be revealed and give us more truth. Anyway, the statues, these sphinxes, they had three names on them. They had the name of Besusans, and they had the name of the Miriam Pitah, and they have the name of Ramses II. But the statues are not related to any one of them because the iconography is matching what the officials relate to the Middle Kingdom iconography, and that's by the anatomy of the face. So they relate it to the Middle Kingdom, even that it has three names. But in many other cases, lots of statues are related to Ramses or Miriam Pitah or others. Many other artifacts are related to them, and I believe some people like to say inherit, some people like to say usurp. Either. I would say inherit better than usurp because it's like their right as the inheritors of the land. Or also, maybe it was not their right. But that's the case. When we date and relate according to the writings, it is the method that all Egyptologists follow, but it's not accurate 100%. Sometimes we run into mistakes because writings were added to a much older artifacts or devices, and we dated it wrongly by the names. And not just that, we also understood the function of it, and I'm talking here especially about the case of the Serapeum, that underground structure located in Saqqara. It's a huge underground structure, all carved in the bedrock, and has huge boxes from different types of granite and cyanite, and also cyanite with porphyritic diorite. These megalithic boxes, imagine the challenge of moving with something that weighs over 70 tons in an underground tunnel, that the tunnel is not more than 2 feet wider than the size of the box itself. So it's a mystery, and when we were there for the opening in 2012, after that interesting site was closed since 1985, and thank goodness they opened it again now, the Ministry of Antiquities. They reopened the site in 2012, and we were there to witness that great moment. Muhammad Ibrahim was talking with one of the officials. He's the engineer who did the renovation, or he did the support for the ceilings that they were worried that can collapse and things like that. So he asked him straight, what's your opinion about how they move these granite stone boxes down? So the engineer was honest enough and he said, we have no idea. We think this is more challenging than the Great Pyramid itself. It's how to move in these underground tunnels, and especially that there are turns and the boxes are located in lower chambers than the corridor that you are walking in. So you would really be wondering how can they do the maneuver, and wasn't it much easier to cut in the bedrock and make it open to the air, and then after housing these boxes in their chambers, build a ceiling on top of it? That was going to be much, much, much easier, because out there you can gather at least thousands of men to drag this 100-ton box. But down there is not space for, like, I don't know how you can even fit 100 men there. And for 70 tons, I believe you're going to need more than 100 men to drag, especially in a tunnel that doesn't have enough space. And not just that, these boxes were also finished down there in these tunnels, because there are some that is unfinished down there. When you look at it, and at some of them that is really finished, the surface is shiny like a mirror. And more than 20 of them don't have any writings, and the 3 of them only has writings. The rest doesn't have writings. The one that they allow us to go down to has the most crude writing that you can see on a granite surface. So it's like a very good example, in my opinion, to see like the best carving and the best polishing, and that has the worstest writing on it, the most crude writing on the surface of these boxes. So, but still, we used, or the officials used, the writings in that box and the other boxes to identify what was it used for. So it had the name Ozir Hip, part of the writings, which is known or pronounced by the Greeks as Serapis. And the story goes that this is a tomb for the Apis bulls, and it's a late period structure. I believe the oldest name in the boxes there is from the 26th dynasty, Wah Ebra, Basmatic the second. So maybe it's older than that, but I didn't see writings there that is older than the 26th dynasty. The rest is more modern than that. The one that has crude writings looks more to the writings of the Greco-Roman era. And it's really so crude that even a straight line could not be done on that surface of granite. And I'm not denying that from the Old Kingdom we have the writings in, for example, in Abu Sir of Sahara. They are very beautiful and deep and sharp. So what I'm seeing seems like what I saw in many vessels, that the writings on it is crude, even that these vessels are coming from much older eras, from the Archaic Age and the older time. That's the first and the second dynasty and the pre-dynastic time. Still the same case on the boxes of the Serapeum. When we saw it, it's obviously clearly that these writings were added to it later, and that these boxes can be much, much older than the timeline of the writing on it. But the thing is, without these writings, how can we guess what this site working for? When you compare between the underground complex or the underground structure of the middle pyramid, which is known as the Osirian shaft. I only seen picture, I haven't been in it yet, but hopefully this year we'll be able to take a permission to go and really look at that amazing underground structure. But I saw a documentary and photos, of course, and the lid of the box that's in the third level is matching the lid of the Serapeum. And I want to say this clearly, because I believe the Serapeum is also part of the pyramid builders structure, and it's for me like a good example of showing what kind of underground structure is running underneath the pyramids. We cannot deny, nobody can deny that there is part of the pyramid running underground in the bedrock itself, and the Osirian shaft is the best example. No matter what they label that, because they think of it or they label it as a symbolic tomb for the god Osiris, and that's why it's called the Osirian shaft. No matter what that label means, it's for me a conclusive evidence that part of the underground structure is definitely not separate from the pyramid complex.
Let me ask you this: how extensive is it? I mean, how deep is it? How far down does it go? Are there tunnels that go elsewhere underneath, or is it a fixed location and once you're in? There's no way out but the entrance that everybody knows of. No secret shafts. No.
No, we cannot know for sure. We cannot know for sure. An extension of it was discovered, and it's still under renovation. So we thought it was limited until that point, but then we discovered that it extends for another a few chambers deeper. And in the technical drawing of it, they show that there is another part of it is running underground and not excavated yet. But they put it in the technical drawing, not part. But it goes for tens and tens of meters underground. It's not small. And it's not the only one, by the way. We have others. Under the State Pyramid, there are tunnels, like many of them. Under Unas Pyramid, Winis, this is the right pronunciation. Under Winis Pyramid, there are also a series of tunnels. And we cannot forget the tunnels in Tun al Jabal, that area in central Egypt. The one that they think was used for like mummifying the ibis birds and the baboons, and that area they think it's from also modern times. It's very, very ancient. The latest layer is the most modern one, but it is announced by the officials there, and it's on a sign actually to say that these tunnels are not fully explored. They didn't even get to the end of it. It's scary, actually, very dark, and I don't know what's why they are not trying to excavate the rest of it, but probably there is a problem with funds, or they need lots of money to do this the right way and so on.
Sure. Well, let me ask you this: have any human remains of any kind ever been found? Have any human remains whatsoever been found down there? Any skulls or any bones at all left over from the old days?
Where?
Well, in the what's effectively the basement, below ground level, or anywhere in the pyramids for that matter.
Oh yeah, yes, of course, they were found. I will tell you something. You remember we were just talking about that the inheritors in the Coptic era, for example, reused part from Isis temple as a church. So, is there a doubt that this place was a church? No, there is no doubt. But is that site originally built to be a church? No, it wasn't, because it's still inside the temple of Isis. It can be the same thing. Somebody can inherit or take part of an underground structure or above ground structure, build on it, or reshape it, reuse it for a new purpose, as a tomb, for example. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So, even if we found structures that was used as tombs, doesn't mean it was originally made to be tombs or made to serve as tombs. But it's the reuse of the structure, the succession of ages that happened. That's why I was mentioning for you that this happened in every era, including today. We benefit from the site. Throughout the ages, inheritors benefit from the sites. Some of them reused it as the structure itself. Some of them reused it as a stone quarry. That they, instead of going all the way to Aswan to bring the granite, they went to the Giza Plateau and took from the third pyramid and from the middle pyramid and from the great pyramid all the granite that they could to rebuild with it or carve it as statues or make millstones out of it or oil pressers and things like that. So I am also not denying that there are tombs done from a scratch by, of course, I cannot deny this, that there are tombs made by the Old Kingdom and the Middle Kingdom that they used it. But there are also other cases that you can see and you can understand the game of the succession of ages. Such as also in Saqqar, you have from the prehistory time until the Coptic era on the same location. That means all the layers lived there. For example, there is in front of Venice pyramid what's labeled as the Persian shaft or something like that. Why? Because they found a burial in it from that era, so they related to it. Everything else, if you look around it, it's definitely part from the ancient pyramid structures. Definitely, no doubt about it. There is another one just like it, which is in the pyramid of Zoser itself, which is not far away from it. In the causeway of Venice, you can find many of the old kingdom tombs that was used again and again and again. So it's a common thing. Inheritors reuses the site. We use it today as a tourist attraction. Was it originally built to be used as a tourist attraction? Of course not. But we reuse it and we benefit well from this. The whole country, we have like 12 million people that benefit directly from the work of tourism around the sites from Alexandria to Aswan. So we cannot be sure of this. Even if you find a burial in it, it doesn't make you sure 100%, because the site can be much older and then reused in another era as a burial. That's what I want to say. And that's why I started with you when we talked about the alignment with the stars and the power of design and all these things. Is it a religious belief? Because these shaft that leads to the stars, the constellations that you were mentioning in the beginning of the conversation, they, in the official books, they think it was a symbolic way or a religious belief for the soul to come and visit the deceased. This is the official explanation that I read in the books about these shafts. But now we know that it's aligned with the stars. Are we going to dismiss the fact that we understood and stick to the old story? This is very hard to believe.
Let me ask you this. Did you mention that the type of granite that was used, did you say rose?
Rose, yeah.
Rose granite. Well, a bunch of that stuff apparently comes from Saudi Arabia and, or what's known as Saudi Arabia now, salmon and the Bianco Sardo, the sweet gold, the Najran brown, the Saudi green, the royal gold, the spring green, the Yazoa, that comes from India, forget about it. Let's see, there's some that comes from Italy and Spain.
Yeah.
And I'm just thinking, no, wait a minute. What about radioactivity, Yousef? I understand the radioactivity in radon is present in this stuff. Is this significant in any way?
We need the research to have equipments and experimentation. We need to do a real research with labs and with geologists and geophysicists, and all this didn't really start solid yet. We are just still struggling in the very, very, very beginning. And we are struggling how the pyramids were built. We still don't know. Then we need to know how it was functioning, if it served something more than just a barrier. and why?
Yeah.
Hmm?
Yeah, it's like who built it? Why did they build it? What does
Yeah,
it do? And you know, even talking about it, you're a stone carver, so you can
yeah.
tell us how tough is it to carve granite? Pretty hard.
I'm
Ridiculous.
working in a piece that is not megalithic, not megalithic, just like the human size. I've been working for a few months now,
So first you got to have the stone, then you got
and
to
I'm
move it,
and
then you got to
was
cut it.
I'm
Sorry,
not working with a copper chisel.
a copper chisel. Yeah, that'll work. No.
No, I'm working with advanced tools. I'm working with circular saw. I used the bigger circular saw and then the medium size, and then I'm using the cable with all the fine tools to make the details. The wig is killing.
I'll bet. Well,
The
then,
wig is full of these little pieces of hair, and I'm still with the best tools, and I cannot do it as good as.
you know, I'm
And
wondering
the
once you
polish,
once you
the
get the
polish,
stone once you get the stone transported, and once you get it cut, if that's not enough trouble, then you have to place the stones. And
yeah.
I think it's just amazing. We still just have no idea how these people did this. And at the end of the day, we still just don't know, do we?
We don't know for sure. And in some cases, I would say, like, I know that it was not that way for sure. When somebody says, like, copper chisels, like, oh, it's for sure not copper chisels. Put this aside. But unfortunately, for somebody who didn't practice, and if they taught him in college or in the school that the ancient Egyptian used the copper chisels, why is he going to mind or why is she going to mind? They're not going to mind. They say, okay, it was carved with copper chisels because they don't know better. Then they start to receive wrong information. And they live with it and they repeat it without the real experience, just repeating it from the books. And I would thank my father for this because in the beginning, when I was a kid, he told me, don't believe everything in the books. It's not like everything in the books has to be correct. And that's that's what I live with until today. And then the experience here is much more effective. And we will return back to another challenge, as I was telling you, the polishing also. That's another challenge. No, everybody is using also the scenes on the walls with vessels. When they have the person, you can see the person holding a piece of stone in his hand, and then he's polishing the surface. So the common explanation for how did the ancient Egyptian did the polish for these shiny surfaces, the common explanation would be with a rock and sand and water. Well, yeah, honestly, from my heart, good luck with these tools if you want to accomplish that function. It might look shiny when the water is on it, but once the water vaporizes, it's going to look white and scratchy for sure. So it was also in the Seraphim when we realized a very important truth. Um, that the box is the shiny surface after the box is smooth, there is a liquid that was used to give it that final polishing. It's not like acid. It's not gonna eat away and then make the surface smooth. No, it's more like a layer of a transparent, kind of yellowish, a little bit liquid that gives that shiny surface to granite and maybe also saved it from deteriorating for thousands of years. Of course, we cannot know, we don't know what kind of liquid is this. Of course, samples need to be taken and tested, but if somebody dares to do this, he's going to go to jail, of course, because we are not allowed. And nobody is allowed to do this research unless they are from a governmental organization. No individuals can come to Egypt and start a project of archaeology to excavate or anything unless they have a government of a country supporting that. Um, I will return back also to something Muhammad Ibrahim always mentioned when because we still ask, it's the best part is when you don't have agenda. I don't want to prove a theory. I'm just looking for the truth. And to look for the truth, you must admit that everything is not figured out. And anybody, I believe, anybody who thinks he has it all figured out, I think he needs to reconsider lots of things. If he wants to be an honest and a true researcher to understand, because this is all about awareness of knowing actually who we are. This is what are we capable of, what we were once capable of, and why aren't we capable of it anymore? Why can't we be in that era, in that state of brain, of understanding, of tuning in with nature? Even in the old kingdom art, I'm not talking about sophisticated technology, but they showed a simple and a functional living way that we missed totally today, and they lived it healthier than we did, unfortunately. And I'm not talking about the pyramid builders just because they built the pyramid. No, I'm talking about the normal dynastic Egyptian priest. So Muhammad always say like, if these were the ways that they quarried and they transported stones and stuff like that, especially when he was finishing his apartment and he struggled with all the workers because they could not fit the tiles very well. His eyes got used to the ancient Egyptian work and he's giving them hell. But this is the best they could do. So he was telling me like it was as a joke. If the ancient Egyptians were able to do all this with these primitive tools, why are we spending billions of dollars for other tools, for the expensive ones? Why wouldn't you use the same methods and accomplish the same work? Of course, we can't, because this primitive work will never accomplish something. Anybody with limited tools is not going to be able, or is not going to even bother thinking of moving around with carrying 300 tons or 1,000 tons, or you know what I mean?
And for how far? Yousef, let me ask you something.
Yeah, sure.
Just a couple of men talking here, almost like we're off the record and we're just getting wild with it, so to speak. You know, I've heard all the stuff about, not all of it, but plenty of it, UFO stuff, Nephilim stuff, giants that roam the earth. And there seems to be evidence that they existed, because there are people who've gone down to, I don't know about what they found in Egypt, I don't know. But I know what they found in South America, and this stuff looks very, very authentic. These huge, huge skeletons, you know, like...
The elongated skulls.
Yeah, 3 meters long, giant, elongated skulls. And you know, people have said, well, maybe the reason that the ancient Egyptians wore those hats that they did is not because it was fashion, it's because that was the shape of their skulls. Okay, so we let that go. And then you start thinking about the extraordinary knowledge they must have had to even recognize the constellation of stars, let alone design a building this big with windows that you can look at and you can see your favorite constellation, the one of Osiris. So I'm just wondering, if we were to get wild with it here for just a minute, do we think, I've heard that the pyramids actually communicate with each other, not the Egyptian-style pyramids, but people that have gone to down to, you know, Central America, South America, Eastern Europe, and they find these things that are similar, not exactly, but they come close to those ones that were built in Egypt, and they say, yeah, these things seem to talk to each other. They seem to vibrate at a certain frequency that's been measured. They seem to make their own oxygen in some cases. And I'm just wondering, when you're by yourself where no other experts or authorities can hear you talk to yourself about this, do you ever wonder if maybe this isn't some sort of time shift, some alternate universe thing that perhaps someone built somewhere else in this very same place, but then ripped open the fabric of time and left this artifact in our three-dimensional reality? Have you ever gone out that far with your theories? Because clearly, to mine that stone, transport that stone, carve that stone, and place that stone, it just seems to be beyond the capacity for human beings to do it. I don't care how many of them you have working for you.
It's not about how many people working, but it's about the knowledge.
That's exactly it, isn't it?
Yeah, if you know how. And take our evolution, for example. If you think that these structures can be connected with each other by frequency or by electromagnetic radio, why not? You have quartz and you have magnetic lines and you have magnetic alignment and you have a sheep that gathers magnetic built on a mound and the granite stone with magnetism and all this, and the radio, of course, from the quartz and all these things, and the power of design. Why not? I definitely, my mind is open to things like this. And we didn't have these things, but then we knew about the radio and the electromagnetic radio, and we started making radio, and now everything, all the cell phones and the satellites and we are now talking. How are we talking right now together?
The electromagnetic radiation, man.
Would somebody imagine that this was possible? That I could be talking with you for, and we can also see each other if we want to, and all these kind of things. Can anybody imagine? Could anybody imagine that a couple of 100 years ago? Or
No.
even less?
No, not at all.
For them, something like magic.
Yes.
So maybe we didn't evolve enough yet to understand all of it, but we are on our way, and this awakening is spreading, and the awareness, and the hidden method. Those who want us to be not in that, they want to put, in my opinion, they want to put the aliens theory, because we don't have to believe that we are capable of being aware and understanding these things. So I don't mind that studying anything, like for example, many things we have in this field. That we have, you have the people who talked about liquefying the stone and, for example, molding it instead of bringing it, which again they're serving the agenda of how primitive people can be doing that. This is one. Like, yes, they could do it because they could mold the stone. So, and many people accepted this theory, and ask any geologist about it, and he will laugh. So we must go to the people with the knowledge. If we want to understand more, then we need more knowledgeable people to start a research, not just the knowledge they have. You must put in your mind that maybe we have something missing in the whole formula. That's why we are not on the right track. But definitely magnetism is part of it. There is no doubt for everything that we've been seeing. And I've been to South America, and I have seen with Brian Forster the elongated skulls, and the size. It's not quite 3 meters. They are tall, but today we have tall people, we have short people. But the elongated skull, yes, it looks different because the skull itself doesn't have the part that's split in the center of the back of the head. And believe it or not, after I toured with Brian Forster, I was reading some of the official books, and I found that Egypt also had the elongated skulls in the prehistory time. The prehistory burials used to have the elongated skulls. And it's different skeletons than the ones found for the dynastic Egyptians. And this is also documented in one of the official books about the art of Egypt by Professor Cyril Aldred. And the elongated heads or the elongated skulls were definitely here in Egypt, and it was found as skeletons in the pre-dynastic burials and the prehistory burials. And it's not the same race. That's what's in the book, that it's not the same race of the Egyptians who lived in the dynastic time because of the shape of the skull, and also the skeleton shoulders are wider, while the other ones had the elongated skulls and the skeleton was smaller. And the civilization of Marmada immigrated also through we have also, this is documented by Professor Salim Hassan and Ahmad Fakhri in their books, how that all the civilization immigrated through the Mediterranean Sea. And when they came to school, when we went to Byblos in Lebanon, we found also the houses of the of that same civilization. So the elongated heads doesn't mean, you can see it doesn't mean that they are aliens, because they still look more to humans than anything else. But, a white skinned person is a human, dark skinned person is a human, a tall man or a tall human is still a human, a midget is still a human. So it doesn't take them from the category of being human beings. But are they the original builders? We cannot know for sure, because their burials also are so primitive. It's not reflecting, it didn't have sophisticated tools or anything. But were they the species, or were they the race living in the pre-cataclysm time? Also, this still needs a lot of study. And I want also to say that I believe, from my belief, that Mother Earth alone has billions of types of lives. So my mind is open for that the universe would have millions and billions of different shapes of lives. But especially that story about I cannot believe it, that aliens or Atlantis. But Atlantis is more interesting subject, because it could be just a mistake in the label and exaggeration in the stories and things like that. But in the story of Atlantis, you can hear that this era, or this place, had advanced civilization, and it was destroyed by a catastrophe. And the catastrophe can be like the flood, which can also be the flood itself can be a reaction from a plasma event. And the plasma event is mentioned also in the ancient Egyptian mythology, when Ra sent his anger and almost annihilated mankind. This is also a famous story written in the ancient Egyptian mythology. So also people like Dr. Robert Schoch is researching that the possibility of the plasma event that was the reason for the flood. And all the holy books, they mention that there was people living before, and the flood came, and some survived, and all this. These are stories that the oral tradition passed it down. And where did Solon and Plato hear about that ancient advanced civilization? It was here in Egypt. It was passed down to them from the Egyptian priest. And when Solon was here to study around, I believe, 600 BC, he came here to study, was from the Egyptian priest, and they taught him about that there was once an ancient advanced civilization. And then you will take us now to another important location that needs a lot more excavation, which is the Heliopolis, or Ion, the city of the sun. That place seems that to have more knowledge about the pyramids and their activation more than any other priesthood, which is the priesthood of Atum-Ra. And the whole structure of a pyramid is actually very similar to what they describe as the myth of creation. The primordial mound, and the primordial water, and the Benben, and the different stage of the sun, and the mound, which is Petach Tenin or Tatenin, can be for activation. What I mean is that the priesthood of Atum in Ul or Ion, they were talking about the pyramids, or telling us about the pyramids as their myth of creation. So it's about life. But we label it today as a tomb. So it's about death. Now, this is a twist in the labels that misdirect anybody who's following. So if you're following, what is the pyramid? The pyramid is a tomb. But if you looked at what is the pyramid, and you search it for the answer in the Heliopolis, you might find a better answer. What is the connection between the mound and the pyramidian shape, which is known as the bin, and the water, the primordial water, and what kind of energy we can produce? And this is not illusion, because we already know the power of design of the pyramid already been tested, and we understand that it has an activation just by aligning it with the coordinate direction.
Man, I'll tell you, it's just amazing, all of this research, and we still just don't know. It's just, it's wonderful on the one hand, a little frustrating, but, you know, it's almost like a dog chasing a car. If we did find out all of its secrets, then what? It's liable to change the fabric of the entire society on the face of the planet if we really knew what was behind this. It remains just, doesn't it just remain the paramount mystery of the world still?
It is. And I can see the structures like in South America, and the thanks again to Brian Forster for showing the chemical school team and the others, the similarity between Egypt and Peru and Bolivia, these megalithic structures there, that site, I love two sites there so much. Also, Machu Picchu is, of course, the most famous. But Sacsayhuaman and Ollantaytambo in South America, they are sure the same thing. And then the terraces were built on them later. You know what I mean? It's clear. No, yani the same idea you can find in Ollantaytambo, that the mound or the mountain is the foundation, and the structure must be with it. And this is not just to find the solid foundation, because the mountain or the mound must still have its shape inside the structure. And this had to be for some kind of activation. And the other thing, when they dated the sites in South America to 13th century AD, and some of them, they match the pyramid structures, especially the walls of Cusco, for example, and the third pyramid. It's like twins. It's like, you know, the same. When you just put your eye on it, it's like, oh, I know what is this. You know what I mean? Yeah. The same thing happened with me. The same thing happened with Brian and Irene when they looked at the stuff here around the third pyramid. So it's like, this is exactly like what's there in Peru. So, and we have a wrong timeline, but there you cannot miss the difference between the Inca civilization and the megalithic structures, because it's so clear, something very crude and something very sophisticated. But here it's much, much, much more confusing, because dynastic Egyptians developed amazing skill and the powerful methods of carving and building, that it became confusing to tell which one is the ancient advanced, and which one is the dynastic. And the best example is to look at the Osirian and the City First temple. And some people think it's the same temple, and that temple is a funeral, also a symbolic tomb for Osiris made by City First or Merim Betah. But others who look at the layout of the structure says, no, this is all the kingdom structure, because it looks exactly like the pyramid. So it's a mystery. And the same like the Egyptian artifacts and the sites themselves. It's known also that everything that was discovered, and I'm talking about hard things like structures and statues and tombs and all these things, everything that was discovered throughout the ages in Egypt is nothing more than 20%, and we still have 80% still buried. And the mystery, I believe, is the same. We hardly have anything really, but it needs really to have a stronger step forward for the research, supported by labs and experiments and the knowledgeable people in astronomy and in geophysics and in alchemy and in electromagnetic physics, of course. It has to be physics, of course. We need we need crews of physics scientists to be working around the pyramid structure and the different elements that's used in it. So we can really have a real research. Without experimenting, there is no real research. We are all like trying to find the truth in many things, but we have limits. I can look, I can translate, I can understand, I can share, I can ask, but I cannot take samples. I cannot excavate. I cannot do, more of this work cannot be done by individuals. And I agree with the system in that case because this is too much for individuals. So it has to be done by countries. And already in Egypt, you have almost every great country excavating here. Americans, British, of course, since ever, and the Italian since the Roman Empire, and the French, of course, we cannot underestimate or forget about them. They do lots of great work. The Germans as well, and also the Polish and the Czech Republic. Many countries are looking at Egypt for many years, and they are trying. But if somebody like this need to be published more, the discoveries need to be published. Unfortunately, since the ancient times, since like the older excavator or archaeologist, like you can find in the 1800 and others, and before, of course, that most of them were just tomb raiders. They wanted just to look for treasures like the king Tutankhamun or the many things. In every large museum in the world, you find Egyptian artifacts smuggled and everything. Doesn't bother me because it's a world heritage first of all, and being in anywhere in the world is going to still be Egyptian artifact. Nobody can deny that it's Egyptian artifact. Plus, we have lots of antiquities also, and we don't have the space to display it. And that's why we have the Grand Museum is now in process of being built, and it's going to be, God willing, the largest museum on earth. And this is the least thing Egypt should have, because not just the museum, the whole land from Alexandria to Sudan. Actually, we left also things in Saudi Arabia and in Crete Islands and in Palestine and in Turkey. All this was once also connected with this land. It doesn't have to be part of it, but the influence of the culture spread in the ancient times with Syria and Libya and Sudan until Rwanda and until Crete Islands and far away. The ancient Kemet was connecting. All the ancient civilizations were connecting with each other, maybe more than us today. And that's a big shame on us that as now today we have all the borders, all the restrictions and everything. We have what we know as the world map since 3300 BC, and this is the official time, so it's pre-dynastic map that shows different nations and the different ships sailing. We have artifacts from the prehistory time that shows that lapis lazuli was brought from Afghanistan. That means people used to travel. Emery, when he was excavating in Saqqara for the Archaic Age and the first and the second dynasty tombs, he found their artifacts, and his saying was that they are more advanced than what we thought, either by what they inherited or what they had already. But it's not it's not quite primitive, even at their time. And we can appreciate some of the art. We can find a piece of granite with a relief carving for Hatshepsut, for example, in the Egyptian Museum. So that's older than Zosen. Yet we still say that Imhotep was the first to build a structure out of stone. And we're talking limestone. And the first structure was huge pieces of granite in the underground, in the base or in the focal point of the pyramid, and lots of white calcite also in the foundation. And we have granite stone structures even before those are. So the civilization itself had to be much older. And this is another struggle because even the official timeline that the officials pronounce, which is around 3200 BC, this would be the beginning of the dynastic era in ancient Egypt. And Manetho, the Egyptian priest who wrote the history during the Ptolemy era, he mentioned or he wrote down that the timeline was 5600 BC. That's what Manetho wrote about the first dynasty. And this was not in his writings, in his book that was later became Egyptica, the famous book. This is not the beginning of the civilization. This is the beginning of the what he labeled as the second Union era, which is the time of Na'armar and the what we call Dynasty 1. So if Manetho called it the second reunion, that means there was a first reunion, definitely. And his timeline goes back to 30,000 BC, and our timeline goes to only 3,000 BC. So we have a lot missing for sure. We have 90% of the civilization still missing in the roots of history. That we are satisfied with this much because it's a lot, but there is still even more. There is still 90% or more not discovered of that civilization. The thing that supported the talk of Manetho is carbon dating. When some of the, I believe, German and the American scientists, they did carbon-14, you know, the radiocarbon-14, they did carbon dating for some of the artifacts. So they took samples from the different eras. They took samples from the Coptic era, they took samples from the Greco-Roman time, from the New Kingdom time, and the Middle Kingdom, and the Old Kingdom, and the Archaic Age especially. So from these eras, the New Kingdom time, the timeline of the officials today, and the timeline of Manetho, and the timeline of the carbon dating matched together with the range of like 40 years up and down. The timelines of the Middle Kingdom was different. The timeline of it in the official books today is 2100 BC. Manetho had more, another 1,200 years added to this, and his timeline, which for the Middle Kingdom, which is around 3,300 BC, instead of 2,100 BC, actually matched with carbon dating. So also carbon dating matched the timeline of Manetho for the Middle Kingdom, which is 3,300 BC. And the Old Kingdom was even further back in time. The official timeline says 3,200, and also for the Archaic Age to 2,900 BC, and Manetho said 5,600, which means 2,400 years more than the official timeline. So carbon dating also went side by side with what Manetho said. So why the officials didn't accept this? They believed that Manetho exaggerated in how many kings ruled Egypt. But who are we to judge an ancient Egyptian priest who wrote for us that history? And his king's list is the only one that contained all the ones that's dropped from the other kings' lists, like Akhenaten and like Tutankhamun and Hatshepsut, that were never documented in the other kings' lists, like the one in Abydos. So even things like that, we are still struggling big time in it. We need to include the other things. And also the timeline of the Sphinx, because according to its all the kingdom, first dynasty, so it matches their official line around 2500 BC. But the work of Dr. Robert Chuck, for example, and he's a professor in geology, worldwide famous and well respected and very respectable and humble man, just to say the truth. So he did his study officially with the Egyptian officials here to have the permission to study the Sphinx enclosure, and they discovered that the water erosion happened from the rain. It's not wind and sand erosion, it's the vertical lines, and it was caused by rain beating down on the Sphinx and on the Sphinx enclosure, which means the Sphinx was there at that time, and at that time, according to Dr. Robert, was around 9700 BC. So that rain stopped at 9700 BC. So this erosion cannot be less than 11,700 years ago. So where are we from this? This has been proven by a geologist, not just any geologist, the best in the field or the most famous. And Susan Moore agrees. When we told her this is the opinion of Dr. Robert Chuck, she said, yes, I see why he said that. And also the geology that, of course, he did his own, like he shared his research with his colleagues. But we also took what he said to the Geology Museum and asked the Egyptian professors about this. And they said, yes, this rain is documented, and it's an era in geology that every geologist knows about it. So it's not like far away, or like it's not a theory. It's now more to a fact. So everything tells us that the timeline extends, and there is more and more. So even with everything we have, we cannot see it all in this much we have. We need to keep looking for more and excavate more to reveal more and study more and research more.
Is the Egyptian government pretty cooperative, or are they still? I mean, with all these people from all these countries coming to conduct their research, it would suggest that the Egyptian government is willing to let people in. But I take it they're probably still pretty protective of artifacts and the sites and smuggling and breaking things and interference.
Exactly. The system is tight about these things because it's a huge responsibility, and they are not taking enough like anything. They are not taking enough funds. These high officials are very knowledgeable. These are Egyptian archaeologists. Some of them are really much more knowledgeable than many famous names, and we don't hear about them. Just because they are the system didn't give them the chance. There are not enough funds in the Ministry of Antiquities to do the archaeology, but the Egyptian government is willing to cooperate with all the governments as long as they have a plan. You know what I mean?
Yes, and well, look, if any of these, I mean, this may be a little light, so to speak, but anybody of these brilliant people that you know who would like to share their discoveries, they're certainly welcome to contact us through you, and maybe we can get a little get together going on this program or a conference or something, because there's so many distractions, and unfortunately, because of all the distractions of modern life, some of the most important things we could be studying, they get pushed over here, and we kind of save that for our leisure time, when actually we should be pushing them up to the front. I don't know about you, but I'm a little tired of politics, so to speak.
Me too. I'm with you.
I'm real tired of it.
Like the research of the research of Dr. Robert Chuck and the studies is published, and it's taken in many universities. But it needs to be the official story from this. We should put it as the official story. The book of Dr. Christopher Dunn mentioning the lost technologies in ancient Egypt was supposed to be translated in Arabic, and I don't know why it didn't until now, but it should be, and it should be part of the official story. Most of the time, they just want to ignore that part of it because they don't understand.
Sure.
But this is the part that you need to focus on because you don't understand.
Yeah.
But now the whole story became like a nice story. Here is the beginning, here is the middle, here is the end, and they are satisfied with this. No, but there is more. Just ask anybody how the pyramid was built. And if they don't know, then a research should be going.
Yes, what a good idea.
Yeah. And,
oh, boy.
Yes.
Well, look, this is, I got to ask you a couple more things. I just have to. One of them is, what do you make of the crystalline boxes they are at Saqqara?
Abu Jarab.
Yeah.
Abu Ghurab, yes. That is a very interesting question and a very interesting place. First, you don't think of the basins as individual. They are part of a bigger device, which is the structure itself. How the structure was, now you are returning with me to the priesthood of Atum Ra. They are the ones who supposedly built that so-called temple of the sun. And it is the same layout of any pyramid structure, with the valley temple and the causeway and the higher temple and the main structure or the pyramid with that bin or obelisk on top of it, with the basins and the hotaba and all these elements that surrounds the temple of the sun. But it's not labeled as a barrier. So the temple of the sun is not a barrier, even if with the layout of a pyramid structure. So what is it? Officially, they say it was a new idea to increase worshipping of the sun god. That's all. But that's, of course, not enough for anybody who wants to really know.
No.
If it's just to increase, so it's something symbolic. If it's something symbolic, why are they going to choose these different specific types of stones when we know that it was not available, not local stones? For each type, they needed to have a quarry in its location. So you have quartzite, basalt, white calcite, granite, and limestone, at least, not to mention copper or silver or electrum or all the other interesting materials. So these types of stones, it's not any calcite. It has to be white calcite, crystallized. And quartzite, I want to tell you that stone is amazing and very, very challenging for anybody who is trying to work with it, especially the types of it that is formed as a conglomerate. With all these flints inside it, then it reaches the level of 8 on the Mohs scale. For example, if somebody got me a piece of conglomerate quartzite and asked me, please carve me a little pyramid like 15 centimeters from this stone. You know what I'm going to tell him? I will tell him, oh, sorry, you brought the wrong stone. Because that is very, very hard really to work on. Can be harder than rose granite, quartzite, which is nobody talks about it a lot. Yet we see they shaped, even in the conglomerate, we see that they cut through the flint, they cut to make huge pillars also, and we can see the remnants of it front of also of the pyramid of Winis, and we can see that it was used, even that it's coming from Cairo here, the Red Mountains, we call it. That's where the stone comes from. But they also moved it all the way to Luxor and to Aswan. The huge colossal statues of Memnon in the West Bank and the others. They are all coming from, so they didn't just move the granite from Aswan to the Delta or to Alexandria or to... They also moved the quartzite from the Delta or from Cairo to Aswan and to Luxor. So, like, why not use the granite stone that is closer to you in Aswan instead of going all the way to Cairo? And then what? you're gonna now go, if you, as we believe, as we like, if we follow the official story, now you're gonna ride the river and go against the flow with the stones. And instead of coming, this is as the official story, which we don't, we know it was happening, but it doesn't explain everything. Same like the famous scene, and it's the one and only, and also in the causeway of Venice, which me and Muhammad Ibrahim are preparing a little documentary about it. It will be published soon. That's what we can do. We can do our own little researches and they publish it either on YouTube or make a blog or on Facebook, or through a very good opportunity like what you gave us today to share some of what we know with the people. So, yeah, if we cannot follow that hard way, which is to work aside with the system, then we're just going to do our way, the simple way, until the time is right for us to go to the next level. Perhaps we are not ready. Remember this, for example, that lost technology was there all the time. It was only recognized in the end of the 18th century because we reached the level to recognize what we are looking at. So now we are evolving. Now we are aware. Now we can accept more things. For example, wireless energy being transmitted. And in my personal opinion, when you see how great and complicated and sophisticated and challenging and incredible the pyramid structure is, I believe, like, if I already have the power to create that structure, I have unlimited powers. So why am I building it for? If I have the power to build it, I already have unlimited power. So it had to be there to serve a much greater purpose. My father used to say it could be a device to live a healthier life. And this means a lot. With all the pollution, for example, we have in the earth and in the plants, it became in what we eat. For example, just the shape of the pyramid, when it absorbs cosmic energy, if it gives it to the water table underneath it, and that water table, and you know water is everything. So if the water was affected by the pyramid power, then it can heal the land, the soil. And the soil can heal the plants, and the plants can heal the creatures. It's like that. Same like we are doing it, but the other way. With our style of life, we are doing more pollution. We are going further and further from nature. You get the genetic modified seeds and, you know, all these kinds of, if we can call it evil things. Then to return back to that and be aware of what the ancient were capable of by tuning in with nature, by blending in with the forces of nature, and know how to harness these forces of nature through these structures. That what can we call it? Well, how can we label it? It's a living structure because it is a formation that reveals what's known in the Egyptian mythology as the myth of creation, the Egyptian pyramids.
It's known as what? One more time?
It's known as the myth of creation.
Oh, gotcha.
Yes. The shape of the pyramid and the elements in it is exactly what is mentioned in the myth of creation, not in the Book of the Dead or the Coming Out to the Dead, like or of these things. No, it is. It's like a transfiguration of the myth of creation. That's what I can say.
And from which people did this myth come?
From the oldest.
The very oldest.
Nobody talks about who built it or when or how. Aeon, the city of the sun, today known as Heliopolis. There are houses and everything, but there's still obelisk from the Middle Kingdom and stuff over there. But it's very ancient. Artifacts was found in it from the prehistory time until also the Coptic era. So it was being until the Islamic era also. It's being used. The site is still being used, and people are building on it until today. So there has to be digging deep, I think, to find the earlier parts.
Yousef,
But now with the equipments we have, like GPR and satellite archaeology and things like that, it should make the job a lot easier.
it should, yeah. Well, let me ask you. Now, you work at deciphering some of the glyphs. Is there anything in the symbols, the hieroglyphics, the glyphs that you have studied that suggests that there might have been some really major, terrible event that sort of reset the clock, that something that happened that placed us into this state of ignorance, or not?
Yes, there is. And I mentioned part of it from you.
Yes.
It's famous. It's a famous story called it's a story called the annihilation of mankind. This is a famous story, and we believe the story simply talks about some stories can be enhanced by the priest, can be reshaped, retold by the priest in a certain way so they can benefit from it.
Oh, yes.
You know what I mean? It's a political thing that happened throughout the ages. But the main thing, they said, the disk of the sun, or Ra, got upset. So he sent his anger. In some stories it's Sekhmet, in some stories it's Tefnut, and there is another story for another. Anyway, these are forms of the energy of the sun, which is the fatal power, like the solar flare or plasma, that almost killed mankind. And then the story was shaped like how they the God mercied his people, and he wanted to save the rest of them and so on. Even if the story was reshaped to serve something for the priest, probably they say they made wine for the lioness so she can calm down and stop killing and think it's a blood. This, I believe, this part of the story was because the priest made lots of wine and they wanted to have customers for their wine. So they added that part of the story. But the main part in the story is that the disk of the sun, Ra, got upset and was almost killed all mankind that was living back then. So this, I believe, is a clear one about an ancient catastrophe or cataclysm.
Wow. Unbelievable. Well, I think it goes without saying that much more is unknown than is known. So I know you won't stop, and I know we won't stop. You've been very gracious and generous with your time. I've really enjoyed this, but we have only scratched the surface. So I invite you to come back again in the new year soon, and let's discuss some more, because I repeat, we're just getting into it a little bit now.
Yes, we mainly talked about the headlines of every subject, and we can take each one by details and talk a lot more about it. We can prepare the whole story about annihilation, the mankind, word for word. Just to give us some time to prepare this for the normal people to know. Yeah, those who didn't have to deeply study Egyptology or anything, for anybody to listen to it, we can bring it, and we can participate also with Patricia and with Muhammad Ibrahim. And I'm sure you can connect with Brian and Stephen Miller, so we can all tell you parts of.
Well, I think this is very valuable, and I think maybe we should think about doing a series and just spread it out over the coming new year, and really let the people know what's happening. It could generate a lot of support and might bring some new research that somebody is just sitting on and has not released it. They might be able to contribute something valuable. So let's do it.
I'll share it with everyone and see if somebody wants to contribute and share some of his experience with us here.
I wish you happiness and prosperity and good health and good fortune in your studies.
Thank you. It never ends, the studies.
No, it doesn't. I think maybe that's why we are all here, is to study.
Exactly.
Goodbye for now.
Thank you. Goodbye and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you. Well, I think that's absolutely amazing. I really do. You know, I did not mention to him, he probably already knows it, I did not mention to Yousef that Stan Deyo strongly believes, I mean, he is confident that his research has shown that Atlantis is not underwater anymore. It's in the Middle East, and it's above water. It's dry, covered by some very interesting mud formations. Now, what excavation has been done at that site, I don't know. We'll have to talk with Stan about that. But isn't it interesting, all the little extras, all the little clues? And may I just say this? We have been provided with mysteries to spark the imagination, to compel us to study and learn more. I don't want to think that we have satisfied ourselves with computers, quantum or otherwise. They're tools. But the means of discovery is not the end. It's almost like if you want to get someplace in a hurry, you fly commercial. But if you want to fly, you take your own airplane and you take your time. That's what all of this is. And one of the things I worry about, and I'm using the word worry, is that the generations that come after us, because of our actions now, they don't have that passion for discovery, for knowledge, the kind of stuff that when you get into a conversation with somebody and begin discussing it, you just get more and more and more excited, as if just the discussion of these things somehow provides you with more energy to continue studying. Or as William Money said to Ned in that old picture, Unforgiven, "Now ain't the time to quit, Ned." And I think Will Money is correct. Now is not the time to quit. Now is the time to reorient ourselves to exactly where we are, where we want to go, and then allocate the time to get there. Each of us has a short timeline. Relatively speaking, it's just a blink on the clock of existence. So let's do the best that we can, and then hand that information intact, unbiased, unexpurgated, the good, the bad, the ugly, the horrific, the beautiful, the amazing. Let us hand that down to those who come after us so that they can carry on when we no longer can. All right, I repeat, everybody's off doing their thing with family and friends between Sunday and Sunday. That's Christmas Sunday and New Year's Day. So we'll be dark next week. But the good news is there are 600 and Chief. How many programs we have now? 6 what? Yeah. 664 programs. So pick one or two or three or four and review and get ready to get together again with us at the new year. 2016 was really something, wasn't it? 2017, I don't even want to think about it. Not today, I don't. I'll think about it tomorrow. I'll think about it tonight. But you talk about sharpen your critical thinking skills, keep those eyes up always, and make ready for what's to come. Oh yeah, that and much more. We'll do our Christmas Eve program on ARC Midnight, 10 to midnight, on radio station KLIF. You can get it on KLIF.com. iHeart streams it. iHeart's a little wonky sometimes, but they stream it. Red Nation Rising streams it. TalkStream Live streams it. So we'll be there. We'll bring a little Christmas tree into the studio, and we'll have ourselves a little Christmas Eve show. We will also be there on New Year's Eve. I'm not going to be out with the citizens out getting a buzz on. I'll be in the chair at the studio 10 to midnight on New Year's Eve as well. In case you don't listen to those broadcasts, and in case you missed the one for tomorrow night. Wow, is it really tomorrow night? Is Christmas Eve really tomorrow night? Yes, it is. In the words of Tiny Tim. No, not that Tiny Tim, not the one with the ukulele. The Dickens Tiny Tim. God bless us, everyone. Merry Christmas. Happy holidays. And here's hoping for a Happy New Year. Be seeing you.